Okay, hello everyone. I'm going to be talking about a topic here, purpose of life, and I hope it's going to be interesting for you all. Yes, let's just begin. All right, so everybody, the first slide here, obviously, just showing um, just the human life cycle, really what it is, just the everyday life of how we are, how our lives are. We just, as you can see, just we're born. As you all know, we turn into a little baby, but we grow in the mother's body, and now there's a child. We play around things, whatever, and then we slowly grow into a teenager, then adult, and eventually go old. We during adult we have our own lives. When we school, we have our own little lives. Then we get old, and obviously we have this end stage, as we all know, death. I mean, I guess what would be the most important, really, stage here? I mean, it's arguable, obviously, isn't it, for different people? But I mean, we cannot neglect the fact of this stage as well, isn't it, for anybody's life? Now, the ones who are wise generally would obviously look into the future and think about this point first when they're here or here. If they had something they want to do, they would think about the end in mind and get forward. Generally, that's the idea. And those people generally are good in terms of their general lives. Yeah, when they look into the future, okay, if I want to do this and this and this, and they're concerned about how they want to progress, they generally do well, hopefully, in the future, and they're pretty good. But I mean, what my the purpose of my topic here is not just about this little life that we humans have, but just trying to go beyond this just normal life cycle, really, that we are familiar with, and we that's all just for now. So let's begin. Right, okay. Now let's look at our normal daily lives in the modern world. I mean, looking to just compare our lives with, say, 100, 200 years, maybe thousands of years back. It's a drastic change, isn't it? I mean, the more technology has come into play, the more radical shifts in the consciousness of the human being has been possible, and it's happening even today. And just it's very radical. See, in terms of consciousness, the human conscious evolution has just rapidly changed, and it has dramatic impacts, really, on our lives, which we're sort of which we tend to neglect most of the time. But it's there, it's growing, and it's gonna grow, soon. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that, okay, and this is just cartoon, right? So you got all these little fellows coming here, they're depicting all these human emotions and all these things, and rise of technology, really, etc. It has an impact, because think about it this way: say if you're born not just now, say 200-300 years ago, even 500 years back, that at that instant, at those times when you were living like a 60, 70 year old life, you wouldn't experience certain things that you would experience now. Like a teenager at the moment, if you have a child and you know that if you have a teenager, the things that you'll experience is dramatic. All these different, everything that's happening in the media. He's exposed to all these things, and exposed to all the Western, or whatever you call it, the influence that's happening globally through the media, through advertisement, through television, all these different mediums, through internet, and it's just gonna go rapid in everything. People are being exposed to adult material from day one these days. It's ridiculous because of this conditioning. The material conditioning is getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and everything is changing. And not only that, I mean, anything in terms of, yeah, like all these technology improvements have a good side to it, but there's a huge negative influence. Not only in terms of everything, but just the conscious evolution and just as who we are as well. Now, I mean, for instance, just like this example, children are exposed to all these sort of material, and obviously this is the least of the worries, really. But still, what I'm just trying to show, I haven't shown any graphic images here, but for children, exposed to all these, rubbish materials. Really, they have nothing to do with, like a proper conscious evolution. It's just the garbage material of the filth of society. Really, that's been plaguing humanity ever since the dawn of civilization, of material to materialization, and that's what's happening. So we exposed to, for instance, seven deadly sins, for instance, whatever you want to call it, really. The things that that are just there, and they're not. What humanity has done is given way too much influence and way too much importance on all these little emotional things that, like, for instance, this is fear or jealousy and greed, and all these things have a great impact when the child grows up, and greedy or whatever, eating too much, gluttony, greed, and lust, whatever, and then wrath, violence, envy, all this stuff. Like, I mean, in religious texts, obviously they say no to it, but we don't understand why, and it's probably something that I might need to discuss a bit further in more detail in this little presentation slides. And yeah, so it's a growing concern, really, of people today, and it's really a plague, really. I mean, material filth is just a plague. I mean, it has great implications, not only here, but everything has its own karmic reaction, as I was saying. So every action has a reaction, and that's the whole point. So everyone in the global community is affected by everything that's been promoting here and there, and you've got all this filth in society, all this garbage filth. All this, say for instance, one guy invents plastic, and everyone finds plastic, oh, it's a brilliant material. Fair enough, but it probably is if it's been used effectively. But the humanity, it's just that we only tend to get one thing correct and just utilize that. We don't want to think of consequences, because all we care about is money or whatever, all the things that tend to make us more quote unquote evil. And this is a problem. And everything we do is about materialization, material wealth, or anything to do with capitalization, capital, and all this garbage, really. That's a problem, and we'll see what's the solution really to this, and which is quote unquote the purpose of life, really. And this is not the purpose of life. The idea is, I'm just showing you here, this little world that we live in is not really the purpose of life, and it's something beyond to it. Same thing here. I mean, like media, fashion, whatever. All the young kids and boys and girls, they're just becoming metrosexual. All the guys. And it's just rubbish. Like, if you look at it, then you might think, what's wrong with these pictures? I might think that no, it's obviously, you might think it's great, it's just a normal thing. But hold on, just think about it carefully. Is this the case of humanity, say, 1,000 years back, even 100 years back? Were we dressed like this? How did we become like this? You got to question these things. Were we like this, say, 200 years back? Just take a look at the examples of people's, back in the days, in the black and white pictures even. We weren't like this before. How did we suddenly become wearing, these women wearing tiny little, whatever, these clothes, half exposed, half not, whatever it is, and these colorful, whatever, these clothes. And people argue with me. They think that, this is all correct. But what about simplicity? There's who we are. Like, completely human beings have forgotten, and they've already been, completely attached to all this rubbish, and it's become a normal part of the society. And once it's a norm, it's okay, and that's the problem. And then we accept everything what we think it's right, and we don't want to question things, and that leads to bondage, and that leads to further suffering and we'll see why. Now this picture here, this is a picture of the devil. I mean, also in the next slide we'll go into much on the detail of the concept of the devil, and about religion, and how religion has sort of plagued humanity as well, and all these things. Now, think that's fair enough. She's got a picture of a horn. The female is a devil, and is that really the case? Now think about it carefully. A female can, how, why is that, what, because in a religious text, the understanding of the devil really is that, okay, it's the opposite side of God, and then, you've got God as the good side, you've got the evil as the bad side. Let's look at the next picture, yeah. So this is pretty much the conception really of most religious, theologies out there, and where it's on the quote unquote the concept of the Abrahamic religions, where you've got one side of the negative, devilish, demonic, and then you've got all the good side here, which is the heavenly character. Now let's look at this fellow here. Okay, this fellow is fair enough. He's pretty much clean. Well, he looks clean and decent. But what about this guy? Okay, he looks like he's meant to be a demon, isn't he? Now let's look at him carefully. Doesn't he look like a human to you? I mean, I don't know. I mean, just think about it this way: the concept of the devil, really, and demons, in theologies, we never tend to go into understanding what they actually mean, and we just, having this blind belief of this demon, theoretical demon that sort of exists somewhere in some part of the universe, and he is going to be, coming and quote unquote. He's the source of all evil. Wait on. Okay, if this is, say, this is us. Okay, this is the good side. He is, quote unquote, isn't he meant to be the equal bad side of us? It's just the common sense, really. I mean, to understand what the demon is, what the devil is, and what the good side is. We are. If we are also this, we can also be this, couldn't we? It's the same thing. The idea is that this guy also, quote unquote, resides within us, and well, it's true, I mean, isn't it? Like, if that was the case, then these people who believed in quote unquote the God, divine, they wouldn't have committed any crimes. They would be, if he was all pure, this guy is all pure, and that's who we are, or whatever. If you believe in the divine, then theoretically you wouldn't be making any mistakes, if I'm right, because you believe in the divine. Is that right? And when you look in the previous slide here, this character here, this is always in imagination, but what I'm trying to say is that if you try to zoom in into any of these minds of these people, these women, for instance, what you'll actually see, if you look into in a practical sense, if you had a video player and you could play what was going on in their minds of these people, you find out that each one of them, even if they believed in the God, whatever, doesn't matter, their mindset would reveal that they're demonic. They're devils. Demonic. Exactly. And this is what's happening to the human consciousness over time. We're not thinking about our own thoughts, because it's not concerned, but we actually need to go back to the consciousness of the human being, human mind, every average human mind today, and see how much filth and garbage there is. I mean, fair enough, there's a good side, okay, fair enough, the technological developments are there, but it always has a cost, and this is what is happening. As long as you're working and you're not attached to a particular thing, then you're not really bonded by many things. But regardless, the society has, literally changed us, completely turned us into these type of individuals. And here as well, so we're becoming more demonic, really. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Is that obviously we understand that the demon is, if you understand the demon is something far out, fair enough. I mean, there's nothing wrong in believing anything, but what I'm just suggesting is if we start to become a bit more practical and trying to see who we really are now and what our thoughts is going on in our minds every single time, you'll see that we're nothing but, we're just transitioning from this guy into this guy. And that's what the current phase of humanity is. And this is the problem of any species, any developing species over time, is that the demonic side of things will, quote unquote, take over, and it'll ultimately lead to the destruction of the species. And it's happened over time. I mean, we're not probably familiar with it, but any time, when a species tends to develop itself technologically, it does not have, it needs to develop control over its evil side, because because the mind is generally demonic. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And there is no peace and happiness. You cannot attain peace, happiness, etc., because the more you utilize the mind is really the source of the devil. Okay, the mind is the problem, and we'll see why. Okay, because think about this. But just look at your own mind, and you'll see that the average thoughts. Except if you're at work, then you probably wouldn't be thinking negative, or even when you're busy. But the time you're free, you're just filled with negative things. The time you go to party, disco, whatever, that's also demonic, because there's nothing practical there. You tend to think it's an enjoyment, it's a relaxation, but what it is that your thoughts are just becoming more and more demonic, and the only difference between you and, say, a rapist or a murderer is that he's not able to control his mind anymore, because his thoughts are just gone quadruple negative. And it starts to manifest on the real world. So the moral is to have control over one's senses, and practice and practice action properly. In order to become like this guy, you need to get your actions correct, and just by mere belief, nothing's going to happen. That's what I'm going to go through. Again, religion really is a plague at the moment. I'm not saying that God does not exist or anything like that. That's not my... I'm not saying that, because that's not... I'm against that. I know that God is out there, yes. I believe in that completely. But religion is a problem. I mean, it is really the plague of humanity. It's one of the plague. I mean, it's not the only, but it is one of these things. So basically, people think, okay, believing in God, everything is great, yes. But how come that is leading to crime? Mass murderers over time. Because if you think about it this way, when you've never really worked on your mind to purify yourself, how can you expect to have perfect actions or whatever? Because your mind, even if you believe in something, what does that really mean? I believe in God. Okay, fair enough. I believe in God. Excellent work. What does that really mean? Quote unquote belief. Is that really sufficient? You just think about yourself. I mean, you're a great believer in God or in the divine. In fact, people are getting less into the belief of God anyway. But I actually believe that it's good to believe in God. Fair enough. I'm not saying it's negative. It's actually positive. It's better than someone who isn't. But what does that really mean? What are your actions? Is that all sufficient? Is everything going to be merry just because you believe in God, for instance? Is everything going to be okay? So are you perfect now? Are you pure? Is your actions pure? And people people argue. They always do, and those who want to defend, they think that you got to surrender, you got to do this. But in terms of action, they don't do anything. They just say, okay, as long as you believe in quote unquote this guy or this guy, go into this prayer, and that's it. That's all they do, and they don't want to practice anything. And what I'm going to say is, like, next slide here. Okay, here, same example. It's got different people in different religions, different people all over the world. Okay, fair enough. They're quote unquote praying or whatever they're doing. Is that going to lead you? I mean, it's fair enough. It helps you in a sense. Okay, like the idea of a prayer is actually to reduce one's ego. Now, how many people actually know that? How many people actually know that? Do you think anybody of these people actually know that? What's going on? I don't know, maybe. They don't understand. People don't understand the truths, and they do not want to seek the truths anymore because it's available these days through media, through everything. Spiritual truths are available. If you just want to go Google it, you can find information. It's nothing. Also, obviously, we got the negative side out there, but we also, Those who those who wish to seek can also seek for the positive things. So, I mean, prayers are good. Like, I'm just say, for instance, these women, these girls, are just very young, and I don't know what they're praying, but it just looks like to me that, I mean, they don't seem to be happy or something. Obviously, people are not happy, not satisfied with things, and want have desires. That's our idea. That we have desires. We want to, and we surrender to God. Say, okay, please give me this or please give me that, and it's probably a solace, which is a good thing, but. I mean, just take an example here, right? Like, are these women really happy? I mean, they're just children, but once they grow up, sometimes what happens is that people have gone so bad in terms of their belief systems is that they think that what we need to dictate over other genders, for instance. That's another problem. Gender issues, like, say, for instance, it could be possible that when these women grow up, they don't have any much freedom to their speech, whatever it is, and that's another problem of the gender influences over time. And when people think that this is better, this is how these type of women, this type of people need to be dressed, need to be doing this and that, and that's not religious freedom either. That's another problem. And here, people just seem to be praying. I mean, fair enough, but is that really gonna lead you to happiness? I don't think she's happy to me there, but I don't know. This guy the same, probably, and this guy doing some prayers. I mean, prayer, people do not want to understand that it's about the human ego, We never try to work on what's within, and we try to expect to find results. The distance between your dreams and reality is called action. Okay, I didn't know that. Is that a new term? Action. Anything to do anything is action, okay? And this is in Sanskrit there's a word called karma yoga. And karma means action. What it just is saying really that let's not just go into just blind belief, but why don't we ever try to explore truths? I mean, okay, fair enough. We, like this guy, probably he has this great desire to explore the mountains and find out. But why don't humanity ever wish to explore what is within? And that is really the main problem, and especially in the Western societies, it's the influence that you got to do some work. But what is work? You got to understand what is work. Work is obviously, okay, fair enough. You go to an office, that's another work. But have we ever bothered as humanity to work what's within? We never care about these things. We try to indulge in other things, and we never try to work what's within. And we expect to find happiness just by believing in something, and we don't, and never care about our actions. And that's the main concern, and that is the main problem of humanity. If we were conscious of every thought, what we were thinking, what we were doing, and wish to really seek what was within, then we wouldn't have the problem that we have now. Global crisis, this, that, because once you know what's within, you'd know how to tackle things and how to deal with problems and all these things and all these other issues that are so much of an importance for humanity today. And that's the problem. Yeah. And it's just getting worse and worse. And yes, that's a great concern. But you can change yourself. That's the idea. To change one person by one person. Yeah, okay. Now, I mean, what's the difference between, I guess, quote unquote, spirituality and religion? Well, the difference really is that religion, is based on blind belief, and spirituality is based on, well, your own experience, which is what I can call the quote closest way to describe the truth. Because think about it this way: if you just said, okay, just memorize the theory in gravity, and he said, okay, gravity exists, but I can't see it, but then you understand that, okay, you drop an apple, it falls on the ground, there's a force there. You can't see the force, whatever, but it's there, and you've seen it. You've done that experiment, and that's a proof that it's there. But science obviously is limited. Their understanding of the universe is obviously continuously changing, and they'll obviously never find the truth because because the truth is always within, and they do not wish to seek the truth. They tend to understand the material universe from the outside. Fair enough, but what I'm saying is that if you cannot find, for instance, the great God, whatever, outside, is it possible to at least try once, or maybe try, rigorously to find something within? Because isn't that the purpose of life, to find something what's more than this entire world? What's beyond this? There is something that's within you that's that you wish to seek, but you've never done it. Every person has that generally, and that's why they believe in God, because they're seeking for something that's not, their soul, or whatever you want to call it, what's within you is crying out to reach something. And then we cannot. Then what happens is that, okay, I do not want to do that. I'm just going to pray in God. That's it, and done. And then the next day I've got to do other things, do that. Nah, and that'll lead you to nowhere. And that's the problem with like 99% of all these religions out there today. Blind belief, really. For instance, for them, like, it's just a great example. It's okay to worship in God, and then it's okay to kill an animal, for instance. You can worship in God, and God says, okay, you can go here. You go and you've done your you've done your prayers now. Now you can enjoy in material attachments or whatever, or go and indulge in flesh of animals. The idea is that if we had a bit of a common consciousness development through understanding the truth within, or just understanding the reality, we'll just understand that everything in nature, really, if you try to even understood nature properly, you'd understand that everything has harmony, balance, and we are the source of this harmony, and we can change ourselves, if we wish to, by transforming our consciousness, which is the core of all problems. And once you do that, you'll know that there's no way to be violent at any level, and that then you understand the path of non-violence. But until then, you will never be able to understand what's the truth. And so the idea is that what I'm saying is that, say, once you go through that, and once you start really doing your spiritual practices, which is known as actually practice, which is an action, and you're rigorous at it, and just like any work, when you go to a job, whatever you do, you keep your consistency at it. And what you will notice eventually, it will take time, because it's a development of the consciousness, and it will take time. But over time, and over time, what you will notice is that you will notice a connection with, quote unquote, what's known as the divine, or the outer dimension, or the things that's esoteric, whatever you want to call it. There is that connection that will actually come in contact with you and guide you. But until then, you gotta strive for it. Because what I'm saying is that until you seek within, you will never find the answers outside, and that'll satisfy you. And there is no way to satisfy the mind, really. I mean, it's always going to have you questions. If you have one question finished, you always have another question. That's why it's just an endless cycle. But if you wanted to find that peace or whatever, at least give it a try. Then you can eventually, and if you're consistent, you will notice that there's a trend, and you'll see a lot of people having these these quote unquote sensations, or subtle vibrations, or subtle senses, subtle sounds, for instance. And these are known as spiritual experiences. Only generally saints, or generally high level people experience this. This is a connection with, quote unquote, the divine. And this is a growth, really. It's known as spiritual growth. And spirituality really is not, quote unquote, religion. So that's how that needs to be understood. Yeah, and once you understand that, then you'll need to understand that there is a path, really, towards, just as anything else, to transform your individual consciousness. Because without action, nothing happens, right? Isn't that right? If you wanted to, earn something, you'd have to work hard, wouldn't it? The same thing. It's practice. It needs dedication. And over time, say for instance, even meditation, the idea of doing meditation, what's the purpose really? If you're doing meditation for like, a couple of minutes a day just to calm yourself mind, but that's not the real purpose of meditation anyway. It just probably helps you out with things, just like any other prayer. The idea of meditation is to go within and go with 100%, 110% really, give it your best, and then only you will see results. Until you push it to that limit, the chances of development of your consciousness and all these things are very limited. So eventually, but the idea is to go beyond your own consciousness to find what's the truth out there really. And once you start doing meditation, you will see the difference. And if the more you do it, then you'll understand this. But unless you do anything, you won't understand anything, because the truth is generally within. If you don't believe that, you need to seek with it within. And that is the highest truth. Through individual experience, one attains knowledge, which is known as jnana in Sanskrit. Without individual experience of the reality, how can you believe in something just blind belief? Like I just say God is out there or divine is out there. There's nothing out there. We never know. Why people spend lives doing this sort of lifestyle? There must be a reason behind it. It's everyone's duty to actually seek something within and struggle and try something to find out. And if you find out, then just go for it even deeper. Until you fully understand this. It's very important. What's the purpose of life? It's not just just do this regular thing and regular job, whatever. That's not the purpose of life. If you wanted to seek within, you'll understand that there's much more high reality that's within, and there's a much more meaning to life. It's not through indulgence in what everybody does. It's just a demonic, as I've been saying that. If you wanted to find the purity or purified or happiness, really, that's what happiness is. Happiness is not through attachment, not through sex, and not through all these other material gratifications from society. We probably even understand that, we'd never wish to bother to find the truth. And one of the pretty much those who wish to really take this next step further, which is important in your life. I mean, everybody wants to be happy, isn't it? Yet we're always bonded. Why? Because we are afraid. We have this great fear within us. Until you fight your fears, you can never achieve anything. That's why there's a battle within. It is known as the Dharmakshetra in the Mahabharata, for instance, the ancient battle. But what's the metaphorical implication? It's a battle of the mind. So we need to all battle, and we need to all fight our fears and actually fight our ego, for instance, in a continuous manner to achieve perfection. It's not through attaining greatest marks in the university or whatever, greatest money or whatever you will call it, all this thing, or having the best wife or girlfriend or whatever, all this best money. These are very petty desires. The desire really should be to seek the truth, to seek ultimate happiness. And how can you attain that? Is through practice. And one of the best really out there techniques, from what I've understood and quote unquote sort of experienced at some level, is this path known as the Raja Yoga. You can Google it, it will have a lot of information. There's nothing that I can I don't need to speak much for it myself, but the concept of Raja Yoga is that it's a gradual path, and it's a practical approach to experience reality, which is known as the divine, which is the ultimate reality, really, of the ultimate truth within every single consciousness, manifested, in various different forms. So you've got, what it's saying is that, say, think about it this way: if you want to attain a fruit, right, how does, in terms of nature, how it works, it's not an easy thing. For nature, first of all, you need to have a tree or whatever, plant. In terms of apple, you probably need to grow the tree. And then only you'll attain the fruit, isn't it? The fruit is the end product of all that. And how does it taste like? It tastes brilliant, isn't it? And it's all product of nature. There's no chemicals and no salt, nothing. There's no No taste, nothing. They haven't added any sugar. It's just a natural thing that's come out, pure. And that's the idea, okay? And in order to attain a fruit, nature has to go through all this rigorous process. And since we are part of nature, it's quite reasonable, really, to to follow something that's similar. And this path is just like that. It's, first of all, what it's saying is that, okay, in order to attain, see the truth, or see happiness, see that, if you want to experience the ultimate bliss, you will need to follow a path, just like you would attain, because you can't just normally attain the fruit. You're going to have to go through the whole process. Similarly, there's the stages, the path, which is known as 8 limbs of yoga. Raja means like the king of yoga, sort of thing. So yoga does not mean exercise. All these young women, all they do this little exercise and they think that's on TV. You might see that. That's really not yoga. That has some exercise to it, some parts of yoga, but that's just a small component of the Hatha yoga. Sorry. Okay. So in this one, let's just quickly go through it. So the concept of yamas. The yamas are just okay, if you want to do some real meditation, not just a joke meditation, that's what's happening in many places. Real meditation really needs to have a strong base, just like you want to obtain good organic fruit. You need to have a strong base, strong roots. And to do that, you need to develop your roots, isn't it? In order to do real meditation, so that's why you need to practice these things. But what happens is that in reality, they never teach you this thing, and they think, okay, you just go into an hour, 2 hours meditation, and everything works. And you could be even great practitioners, really. Today they might be very famous, but they're not really experienced much anyway. But this path really genuinely works. It's very practical. So I'm just recommending this one in particular. It's one of the royal paths, really. You wouldn't even believe it, but I'm going to say it now, is that even the divine has actually taught the path. But you won't believe me, but the divine has come and taught the path as a human being. It's just something that people don't believe in the avatar as concepts, but that's the idea, for instance. But you need to seek this. The idea is to find this out within yourself. Okay, the first step is called yamas, which means code of conduct. And this is absolutely important. Out of all these steps, the fundamentals is these two, yamas and quote-unquote niyamas, self-discipline, study, devotion, and code of conduct. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now this is very important, as I said. In everyday life, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, where you go, you could be doing any sort of work, really, and you could still apply these basic principles. And these are the foundations of a proper path to live. And you will see that when I say that. Without this, you cannot attain anything almost. These are the great, important, basic components, taught by the great masters of all times, actually, but forgotten by humanity, and their interpretations of their scriptures. So the great masters, obviously, like Jesus Christ, you've got Gautam Buddha, Muhammad, all these people, people that we worship now, but we've forgotten what they've taught. That's the point. And we quote-unquote rely on all these scriptures, texts, and that have a less implication, probably written by another person who's forgotten the meaning of the actual context of what the actual teachings were. And that is the problem that humanity is facing. Okay. And, And one thing people need to understand here is that every action has its consequences. And that's the way the universe works. So the concept of the heaven and hell is also, quote-unquote, has some truth to it. But I'm not going to go into the concept of heaven, but especially the concept of hell, for people to make them aware, is that every action, negative action you do, you will have consequences, and that will be faced in your afterlives. And then there's this process known as the reincarnation again, but you won't believe that. Okay, that's fine, and I'll have no problems with that. But those who want to believe in it, is that you need to have this little fear of that, okay, there's something wrong, I shouldn't do negative things, I should only do positive. That's the reason. Okay, it's just the way the nature is. Okay, yamas. So we got 5, at least these are actually 10 of each of them in the real, most, the detailed version, but this is the 5 basic ones: ahimsa, satya, astya, brahmacharya, aparagriya. Out of all of them, probably the most important is ahimsa, which is non-violence, as you all know. People have been taught in Buddhism, but again, the philosophy, the practice isn't there. Satya, truthfulness, always being truth. Astya, non-stealing, that sort of attitude. Brahmacharya is not really moderation. It's actually, it's a great path known as and celibacy in terms of, well, not moderation, but actually, it's moderation in a sense, but it's actually to do with the purification of the human consciousness through practice of absolute celibacy, and not only celibacy, but celibacy in thought, word, and deed, which means every time you have a negative thought coming out, you would notice that, and you'd observe that, and you would try to purify your thought, because we only tend to purify our actions, but without purifying the thoughts, nothing changes. And it's all about purification of the thoughts that leads to purity, that leads you to a higher consciousness. And therefore, restrictions in all these other attachments, like ahimsa would not to eat flesh of animals, but you see that happening everywhere in even maybe Buddhist, Hindu cultures these days, because they've forgotten all the basic concepts. Anyway, the idea is to purify oneself, and in order to, when we try to do this, it's a voluntary choice, isn't it? All these things, and therefore we can try to control them, and the more we do, the more better our control is, because we are aware of it. If we're not aware of it, there's no development. And the second stage is known as the niyamas, which is self-discipline, cleanliness, contentment, simplicity, purity. And the tapas means actually meditation there as well. Swadhyaya means self-study. Now, self-study is about really, to find out who we are. To observe ourselves is also another type of study. But to study scriptures is also another study. Okay? And I myself am not a great, I have read through text, but again, the idea is that if I promote some text, some the other, that's another problem. The idea is probably for you to, find out what's the best text. And I shouldn't really, emphasize that this is particularly right and that's particularly wrong, because that'll again create this, negative vibe against other things. But generally, the idea is that if it follows the concept of ahimsa, non-violence, purity, then those texts generally have some truths to it. Otherwise, it's better not to read other texts. The idea is to get out of the text, and focus more on the practical truths. Then the most important, obviously, of all of this is the Ishvari Pranidhana, which is known as surrender. All right. So what it means is that without surrender to something almighty, your ego is never going to go. The concept of believing in God is great, because if you believe in something divine, you can actually surrender to it. Surrender means that surrender all your ego. That's the idea. If you didn't believe in God, it doesn't matter. Just believe in something that you can surrender your ego, and people don't do that. If you learn to surrender something, surrender to yourself to something, you'll see that there's something will help you out, from within. See, but that needs to be complete surrender. That's known as Ishvari Pranidhana, which means surrender to God or surrender to something higher to you. And once you do that, you know that your ego within is quote unquote slowly going up. But this has to be done on a consistent basis, because every time you have negative thoughts, you need to quote unquote Ishvari Pranidhana, means surrender, and say that I'm sorry, forgive me. And you keep on improving on that aspect. And that's really the technique, really, of developing your consciousness. Because you realize that you make mistakes, and the more you surrender, you'll see that, okay, it's easy. It's easy to surrender to, even to your friends or to your family, or to whoever you want to do that, you can surrender. You don't have to go to confession or whatever. The idea all behind is actually surrender, but the surrender is not that. The surrender in your thoughts, in negative thoughts, and purifying that. Because everyone makes mistakes, but it's the purification that matters. and that'll lead you to cleanliness and contentment in the mind. You know, so anything you have negative, you do that, and you try to avoid, avoid any distractions, avoid any attachments. That's the most important part. The attachments, material attachments, the TV, media, junk, all this filth, all these attachments with your partners, whatever. These are created suffering, and has to be detached from that. Detachment is the key, and detachment is the goal, and detachment is the way of life. I cannot emphasize the word vairagya. That'll lead you to freedom. Otherwise, there's no freedom without vairagya, which is the voluntary choice to detach from material realities. Then you go asanas, postures. So these are basically what you see on the TV as well. The people do various sort of exercises. And I mean, I don't tend to like watching those sort of videos, because most of them are just, young women, and all they care about, they don't know how to, they're not a good influence, because they don't know how to dress properly. They don't know, and they're affecting the consciousness of other people by dressing, inappropriately in yoga, for instance. And I've just seen that over and over time. And then all these other, yoga teachers are not really that great. They're not a good influence. I'll just avoid that, and I just try to understand the real asanas techniques. You can probably, again, Google them and understand them and practice them, but not watching any other videos, but trying to find some real teachers. But the more you search properly, you'll find something. And then again, this once you get your postures right, it's about exercise, breathing techniques, yoga, pranayama. That's the next step, is pranayama, which is a life force, really. It's about how to breathe properly. This is very important, more important, I guess, than the asanas. But it's about breathing properly, and this is very important, because the way we breathe has a great effect on our mindset. Okay, that's another thing that people don't understand. And with the most appropriate breathing, we can actually purify the mind, and then we can concentrate longer. And we need to extend our concentration and through meditation. Because if you want to do meditation for long periods of time, you need to do all these preliminary steps. And then you withdraw the senses, obviously, to withdraw from negative things. That's what we just talked about, vairagya and pratyahara there. Dharana, sorry, my bad. Okay, dharana is the concentration. So what it means is that without doing all these things, it's hard to actually concentrate. If someone teaches you, okay, you can just go meditate, and you're eating, flesh of animals, for instance, what they don't understand is that all these negative things, we're actually blinding you. If you're having, if you have a partner, for instance, you're not going to be able to meditate. And if you're attached with sexual realities, if you're attached with meat, because why am I saying meat again? It's just I'm saying that many times, is that it affects the consciousness. And there's certain foods are actually naturally sattvic, which promotes your consciousness. And without doing all that, without detaching from negative to positive, for instance, if you just rely on fruits and vegetables, you'll be able to concentrate better. Why am I saying that? I'm not saying that. You see it for yourself. It's my own experience. I know that for a fact. Because the problem is all these other things have a lot of clutter in them. Like if you eat too much salt and all these things, you'll feel bad. Why? Because they're affecting the body. They were not being meant to be eaten, and humanity thinks that these things are okay. What does your heart tell you? What does your heart tell you? That's where you should be going through. So the idea is to eat very simple food, and only fruits, vegetables, and stuff like that. And probably rice and a little bit, don't put too much of this all the spicy stuff, etc. All these these things that just influence the body to not to be able to meditate or think properly. So once you purify your food and your consciousness and everything else, detachment from other things, attachments, materials, then you'll be able to start to meditate. So that's why dhyana, meditation, is the seventh limb of yoga. Okay. And meditation is a different ways to meditate. There's some called mantra meditation, but dhyana meditation is really basically just to meditate, with your eyes closed and focusing on something at a particular point between the eyebrows. That's the idea. It's just about building the focus of the mind, and then once your mind is much more focused, and you've followed all this truth, and it's surrendered to something that's within, then that something within will slowly reveal to you, and then the reality behind all creation. Okay, the whole creation of nature, there must be something, some power, whatever consciousness that actually is able to do this. There's nothing random here. The concept of probability of randomness, it's not. If you think it logically, it doesn't make sense. And that the answer to all that is quote unquote known as, quote, people have called it God or whatever it is. That sort of thing will reveal itself to you over time. That's the truth. The more you practice is perfect, you'll see that sort of connection happening. And then that will lead you to eventually, if you keep going and you strive for it, you will want to experience the truth. You'll find that, okay, eventually you'll come to this stage. But don't expect too much, because the more you expect, the more you detach from it. You won't be able to experience the truth. Because any sort of desires, you'll find that eventually that even any positive desires are not good. So you don't desire for anything, but the truth will reveal itself to you. And that's the idea of meditation, the real meditation, being attached to nothing. When you meditate, you're not attached to anything, any other reality. Just you focus on what it is and what's to be done. That'll actually get you out of a lot of garbage and all the bondage that's happening. And meditation is the birthright of humanity. It leads to peace, freedom, and one with all, and liberation as well. Now this is a great picture, final one, really. It is showing us a Hindu god, Lord Shiva. But what it is showing really is, look at the face of Shiva, right? You should see something. He's in meditation all the time. That's the Hindu mythology of this particular god. And it just looks like a human being, no different than us. The idea here, check this one out. Like, he's actually in tears, So this is the idea of samadhi. Samadhi is the state where you actually, it's a state of almost then like an enlightenment, where one actually is in tears, but not tears of suffering, but tears of joy. And it's coming all the way through meditation, When your mind is perfected, then you realize that the bliss, quote unquote, known as the bliss of the love of God, or whatever you want to call it, all these terms are there. A love, everything that's been manifested in terms of nature, that consciousness will manifest within you as well. Okay, and that is the quote unquote. Then that will lead you, which is known as to freedom, because you understand the reality that behind the creation, behind everything else. And there is no purpose for you to quote unquote be, coming back again, quote unquote, so whatever it is. What's been missing is sort of complete, whatever you want to call it, that completion will happen. And that's the whole idea, purpose of life, into bliss and happiness and quote unquote heaven, whatever you want to call it. But that needs to be experienced in this life, not somewhere else, and not some belief system that leads you to freedom, that doesn't do that. You need to do it in this life, and to be determined at it. The more determined you are, the more success you'll become. I bless you, and I hope you all do well in your future spiritual endeavors. Thanks.